thanks for checking out another episode of the Good Advice Podcast. Hey, you're in good company today. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you're tuning into a show that's going to give you some actionable, tangible advice on how you can run your business better. This is an old conversation with my friend Ray Cros, who runs Cros Dental all the way over in California. I love Ray's startup story. In fact, there are a couple of lines in this interview where he says something to the effect of, I had no idea if we were ever going to make it. And man, if every entrepreneur can't relate with that line. So wherever you are in your business, Ray's going to be telling a story about how he went from starting his business to ultimately scaling his business, and more importantly, how he views his employees today and why so many people continue to come back and be repeat customers of his business. So many great insights in this episode, but before we dive in, let's have a quick ad from one of the amazing businesses we love to talk about on the podcast, and we'll be right back to the show shortly. Hey, have you been thinking about your health insurance plan for this next year? Maybe you just jumped into the world of entrepreneurship and you're thinking, geez, is it possible to have a good insurance plan if I'm no longer working for a business? Maybe you're even running a business and you're thinking about what does it look like to have an affordable group plan for your employees? Well, I want to tell you about Optimum Health Insurance. This is a customized healthcare plan for you and your family, and since 2018, they've been helping people get awesome, affordable healthcare coverage for really nothing at all. It's easy, it's hassle-free, and frankly, they're different from the big insurance companies that you might talk to. And crazy enough, you might even be paying less than what you've paid at a previous job when you were on some company health insurance plan. If you want to find out more and save money on your health insurance, you absolutely need to go check out OptimumHealthInsurancePlan.com. That's OptimumHealthInsurancePlan.com. That's today's sponsor. Enjoy this episode. Ray Cros and his wife own a dental practice called Cros Dental. They're all the way over in Rancho Mirage, California. Beautiful area, really vibrant community. And Ray, man, I am just so happy to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you, Blake. Thank you. Happy to be on here, man.
Well, you and I, man, it's just such a, it's funny because I feel like your physical environment in terms of what people perceive about California and Rancho Mirage is probably a bit different than what people think of when they think of Arkansas. So I don't know what stereotypes you get, but for me, when people are like, oh, Arkansas, they're like, do you wear shoes there? Like, do people have all their teeth and, things like that. So,
well, here it's the Southern California, man. It's the flip-flops and sunglasses.
Yeah. So what's the weather like over there?
Now, well, we're in a desert area, so we're maybe about 2.5 hours from LA. So now I think it's starting to get cooler. It's probably maybe I think about 85, 90. But just 2 weeks ago, it was maybe about 112, 113. So it gets pretty hot out here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, man, I am, like I already said, I'm real excited to have you on the podcast today. And a little bit of a different kind of podcast episode in that people I've had in the past have had. You are a unique person in the sense of I haven't had someone from dentistry on the podcast. So this is exciting in and of itself, but I typically have a lot of like digital marketers, branding, HR, just things that are more in my wheelhouse. And so absolutely thrilled to have someone from your background on to tell a little bit about your own experience and especially, man, just the journey of small business ownership. I'm excited to hear more about your story.
Yeah, for sure. So how far back do you want me to go?
Let's
I don't know if we have enough time for an origin story here, but
yeah. Let's start surface, and then I'll push in a little bit. So you had told me before we started recording, you and your wife opened your practice 10 years ago,
right?
And also for the listeners, a little bit about how you and I met. I had a mutual friend in Aaron Burton who does a lot. I think now he's running the route of like mergers and acquisitions, but he had asked me to come on his podcast and talk a little bit about management. And I think you had heard, not on his podcast, I guess it was like a live video or something. And you heard a little bit of that. You and I got connected. And then as you started checking out some of my content, I got an email from you that you were like,
dude, this is great stuff. I'm already doing all of this. And so I'm obviously really intrigued because I'm like, well, man, I always want to hear from somebody who already gets it, who already manages really well. And you know what, man, I fact checked you because I Googled your business, Cros Dental, 65 Google reviews, 5 stars. Goodness gracious, man, you are killing it with what you're doing. Talk to me about the business. What do you guys do day to day? What does that look like? Give me a little bit of that information.
Okay. So, we offer a comprehensive implant and cosmetic dentistry. So, we do a little bit of everything. Everyone that comes in has different needs, right? You've got people that are just in for basically a checkup and cleaning. You have others that just may need some basic treatment, fillings, things like that. And you have others that may require more surgical services, implants, tooth removal, etc. And the nice thing working with my wife is that we can each pick what we enjoy doing most and just kind of hone in that craft, just working that. So that for me is a real blessing, working with her and basically just pursuing our passion. There's so many niches in dentistry that you can pick and develop. So that's what we do. So we got that aspect of it. And then you got, running a business, that's hard enough. So juggling that, honing your dental skills and being a good clinician, being a good boss, it's just so many hats we have to wear. It's definitely not easy. I've talked to other colleagues of mine who've had their practice for over 20, 25 years. And it's not like the way it used to be, that's for sure. So you got to really love it and be in it for the long game. This isn't, you just can't go in it without really having that passion and being determined. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
So what's different about dentistry today? You mentioned it's not like it used to be. I'm totally naive. I just show up and I get my teeth cleaned and get the occasional cavity filled. So.
Well, there's a lot that goes on in the behind the scenes. You got to make sure that your protocols are in place. You've got good systems in place, and both systems that kind of protect the patients with HIPAA, for instance. HIPAA compliant. You got to make sure your digital systems are in place. I'll give you a perfect example. Just last week, I had to update. We had to get a new server. We had to upgrade our server and basically do what's called a migration from our old server to the new server and transfer all the patient data over. And that took days. I was maybe working 12 to 14 hours a day just doing tech stuff, nothing related to dentistry, making sure that all the files transferred over properly and that we didn't lose any data. And then, after we finished that, then I had to reconnect everything to the cloud and make sure that everything's being backed up to the cloud as well. And we have an external local drive too. So we do a bit of IT stuff too, a lot of us. And so you have that aspect of it, right? Then you got to make sure on the front end too, when patients are checking in, if you're completely paperless, that's working fine too. We have a kiosk for people for our patients to sign in on these tablets, and then that gets uploaded into our practice management software. So we got to make sure that's always working. Sometimes there's little kinks with that too, and we got to try to overcome that. And then you got appointment reminder systems too. Got to make sure that's working fine. I had to make sure that software also migrated over to the new server. That way patients are getting their appointment reminders, et cetera. So you got that whole other side of the business that maybe some people aren't familiar with that we have to juggle with.
Well, and let me interrupt for a second, because I want to get to your origin story, especially in terms of like day one of starting the business. But as I'm listening to you, I hear two things. I hear, oh my gosh, this sounds like a lot of work. And the second thing I'm thinking about is it sounds like you guys have really embraced using technology to innovate your business. And I don't know if that's the norm in your industry, but I do know in businesses in general how often, and it's kind of like, because I don't understand it, I'm wary of using it. Like the cloud's a great example of this. It's amazing how many business owners I talk to who are slow to utilize technology. And it sounds like you guys have you're really using it well.
Well, we do it for the patient's convenience. First of all, it's to make it a better experience for our patients. Number one, and secondly, to protect all their information, right? To make it HIPAA compliant and safe. That's the second reason, and that's where it's not where everything is heading. That's where we're at already. All my colleagues in my area have some form of technology already integrated into their practice. I got another colleague that he does everything on the cloud. He doesn't even have a server. So it just all depends. It just pulls up patients' information and their schedules, just everything online.
Interesting.
So that's
depending
how far you want to go with it.
Well, as I'm listening to you, I have on my computer monitor, I have your reviews pulled up. And it's just incredible what some people have said about you. This one, Dr. Cros is a miracle doctor. Talks about the staff being so friendly, professional, and sweet. Dr. Cros and the entire staff are amazing. I'm just scrolling through, and it's 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. And I think what happens a lot of times for people who are aspiring business owners is they see the super successful person, and they have a really tough time connecting that individual with the first step. You've obviously built something really meaningful. Take me back to year one of the business and, sort of like whatever, and maybe, I don't even know if you remember like what you were dreaming of whenever you started your practice, but let's go back there. And I want to try to unpack a little bit about your history.
Okay, I'll try my best. Okay, so day one was definitely challenging. We weren't business owners before. We weren't trained to be business owners. We knew very little about business. All we knew how to do is be dentists. So we had to pretty much learn as we went, and we hit the ground running pretty much with the practice when we took over. We had all these patients, and we just had to try to figure it out as we went. It was a very stressful. I'd say the first 2 years. Just not knowing if we were going to even make it. It was hard, definitely, and then the staff too. We had the staff. We weren't even. I thought I knew what I was doing, but even when it came to the staff, I didn't have any training how to handle employee issues, conflicts between employees. So I had to learn very quick on how to manage that. So, like I said, it was just so many different things that I had to learn in a short amount of time, and it wasn't hard. It was hard at first, then eventually started getting a little easier after year two. But I think with the employees, that's very challenging too. But as I started figuring this out, and of course, reading books on it and listening to other podcasts, etc., and drawing on some of my experience prior to dental school. My first degree is in psychology, so I worked at a mental health clinic too for about 3 years before I went into dentistry. So I had to kind of draw a little bit on that experience too, and from my time in school to really kind of grapple with this and try to figure out my employees and work with them. And what I found myself doing more and more as the years went by, and it wasn't natural at first. At first, when you're a new business owner, you're just like, well, I'm the boss, and you just got to do what I say, And I was noticing that wasn't really working. Just wasn't working. So there's a lot of introspection starting to go on within myself, just sort of self-analyzing everything, and just putting myself in their shoes, and just just trying to examine my own kind of emotional processes and even how I would react to them. I mean, as a boss, you carry a lot more weight, even you can make a face, and that's enough to just crush their day if they're not doing something that you're happy with. And I've learned to just be more careful with that too, just more conscious about it.
What was like you said, it wasn't working. I mean, what was like the data that you had how did you know it wasn't working?
I mean, I could just tell. I mean, things I was trying to get them to do, they weren't doing right. Some calling in sick more often. And that could have been just maybe not entirely their fault. Could have been I was under quite a bit of stress being a new business owner, that I don't blame them at the time. So I think it was just a combination of factors. Yeah, that's.
Well, let me, because I'm pretty interested in this because, let's talk about like the employees calling in sick, for example, and I've worked for the company where people call in sick, and they call in sick on the 2 days they call in sick on is Monday and Friday, right? So
yeah.
You can have the 3-day weekend.
Right.
If they're especially having a tough time, they're going to call in on Friday and Monday and have the 4-day weekend. But talking to bosses though, who it's very much the conversation comes on to the topic of quality of workers, and you get remarks like, well, they're just lazy. Well, they're just not in it. They're not bought in, yada, yada, yada. And it's intriguing to me that your reaction wasn't, and maybe you felt this at some point, I don't know, but just hearing you talk about it, it wasn't like indignant, like everything I'm doing and you're calling in sick on me, how dare you? But instead, and you had mentioned this to me before also in one of our LinkedIn messages on how if you could say there's one thing that's really driven you to success, it's like this affinity for being introspective and being reflective. And you even just said it again in your story right there of like, okay, what do I need to read? What do I need to figure out that's keeping me from being the boss that I need to be? And I'm just curious if you've ever thought about like what is it that's in you that caused you to frame the problem in that way where it was your responsibility as opposed to some bosses where it's always them and it's always what their problem is and they're not performing. And
well, I mean, for me, it's easier to change myself than it is to change my staff. It's really not that hard.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like I can code. I mean, it's simple as that. I mean, I don't know.
I have to steal that. That's good.
You know what I mean? How can you change a staff of 5 or 7 or 8? I mean, you're going to drive yourself nuts. You're constantly firing them, hiring the next batch of people, and then it's a revolving door of employees. I don't know. Doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I think you're right on.
Just trying to be a better boss and take care of them. In my case, they've helped me realize my dream, owning a practice, and I got to take care of them, whatever it takes. I mean, we've taken them to Disneyland before. We celebrate their birthdays. As a matter of fact, one of our front desk girls' birthday was yesterday, and we got her a cake, and one of the other girls bought her some decorations too. I was blowing balloons along with them, jumping on the counter, taping the banner, happy birthday banner on her desk. And when she came in, I mean, she was just in tears, tears of joy with what we did for her. And, it meant a lot to her.
Uh-huh.
And just little things like that goes a long way. For me, it's not a struggle. It comes easy to me. Just so you do that, you take care of them. You treat them like you would with a customer. I mean, you spoil them, take good care of them. Then everything else sort of takes care of itself.
And it's funny how obvious that feels, and yet it doesn't feel like that is the majority trend, I guess, especially for larger businesses. And maybe I'm just biased in that I just end up talking to people who are really unhappy in their jobs. And maybe it is a lot more pronounced than I realized, but everything you said, and you even said, it's the little things, but it sounds like you're even willing to do bigger things where I think you just mentioned you've taken them to Disneyland.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you know who's my inspiration? Richard Branson. I mean, look at that guy. I mean, he's got it down. He, see him on LinkedIn everywhere, and how excited all his employees are. And he's running how many businesses? God knows how many.
Right.
He's figured it out.
But why do you think it's like? What do you think the disconnect is, though? Because like you have found the recipe and it works, and like we know it works because again, I can easily pull up your website and I can pull up your reviews and everything's here. I mean, they talk about you, they talk about your staff. So like you have the recipe that works. But sometimes I feel like when I talk to people, it's like I'm convincing them, or it's like, please invest in your people. But you get it. I don't know. It's just.
Well, I mean, I forgot to mention the turning point for me was we decided to do something different about actually a year or 2 or 3 when we decided to have a meeting. And I assured them that they can, if they wanted to attack me, they could. There wouldn't be any repercussions or anything like that. That I really wanted to get feedback from them, and I did. They gave it to me. They gave it to me hard. So that was the point that I decided to make some big changes with respect to myself too.
What were some of the things that they told you?
I think I'm trying to remember now. I mean, some of the things that I overlooked about myself. Well, like one example, like I said, just kind of they forget to have something out for me for my procedure. To kind of not make a face at them or looking at them like I'm shooting them with darts from my eyes.
Right.
Not going.
It's the whole. I know this face because I know what I mean.
And this is me with my mask on, my surgical. I'm also in my outfit, my hat, my glasses, and they can just sense the intensity when I'm missing something that moment. But I need it. I'm in the middle of surgery, and making some fine tweaks like that, which for me was nothing. I was like, okay, guys, I get it. All right. You made your point. I promise to work on that and be better, and I have. And it's been now 8 years later. I have staff with me. I've had one for 10 years, and the rest more than 6 or 7 years. So, and I, every morning when I come in, I greet everyone. I check in. I'm always checking in with everyone, see how they're doing, how they're feeling, how's their family doing, how their kids are doing. I mean, it's important just treating them like human beings. I mean, it's not hard.
I just love how easy you're making all this sound because I've had some
practice now. I've had some practice.
Yeah.
I talked to the 2007 Ray. Might have been very different.
Yeah. Well, and I think and so 2 things, man. I love your willingness to expose yourself to them in the sense of. I guess that's an awkward soundbite.
No, it's fine. I did.
But you did, yeah. You said
I got hurt. I did get hurt. I did take it personal in that first meeting that we had years ago. And, I overcome it. And we have one now every year where I go, hey, okay, I need your help, guys. Let's find ways of improving the business, improving our systems. Anything you want to share or say about me as a boss? Am I doing a good job as a boss to you guys? And I get instant feedback from them.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it makes me think of, So I like how you get instant feedback because it's just faster in general. But there's a tool called 360, and it's called 360 because you're getting feedback from everyone around you, like a 360 degree circle.
Yeah.
And it can be kind of an expensive tool. It can be $700, several $100s to use it and implement it. But I was talking to a business owner who was thinking about it, and he said, I really don't want to spend that kind of money. And I said, okay, well, here's the deal. Here's a really cheap way to improve your leadership in your business. He's like, okay, what is it? And I was like, just go ask them. Just go ask them what they think of you and they think of your leadership. And
absolutely, but you got to do it in a group setting. One-on-one, I think it could be a bit intimidating.
Sure.
It's got to be all of them and you alone as a boss.
Well, the kicker of this story though was he goes, he goes, oh man, I don't want to do that. And I was like, well, why not? And he's like, well, what if they say something like negative about me? And I was like, that is literally the point. It's not to stroke your ego. It's to figure out what needs to change.
Absolutely. That you can't be by yourself or what you can handle or not. It's for the greater good, and it's really to improve your business. So I got over that a long time ago. There's no room for egos in my office. You know, it starts at the top. And and you know what? The customers, or in my case, patients, they pick up on that. They know that. They do. I've gained new customers from having left their previous doctors, because not so much the way the doctor was treating them, but the way they saw the doctor treating their employees, and they didn't like that.
Well, and I think it again, and I don't know if I'm beating a dead horse here, but it just seems so common sense. But we can all relate to the business that we walk into, where the frontline employee who greets you obviously doesn't want to be there, obviously hates their job. And you can feel that as a customer. And in some ways you empathize with the employee, but in other ways it's like, man, I don't really want to do business here, And so,
right.
To me, it's an obvious connection as to why you would invest in your people, because again, those are the people who are going to represent your company well. Absolutely.
And they will. Yeah. And the greatest compliment I can receive from our patients is when they say, you have an amazing team, your staff, they're great. And that means a lot to me. My staff, they pamper everyone. They're giving neck pillows to them, lumbar pillows, sunglasses, blankets. I walk in, I'm like, this person looks like they're ready to, fly somewhere to like Paris. I'm like, wow, okay, cool. And I still ask the patient, are you comfortable? Do you have any questions for me? Are you comfortable? And then they just give me a nice big grin, and then we get started.
Now what? Take me back even further. What made you want to open your own practice?
I think that's just a natural progression. I think for a dental student, that's what I think many kind of aspire to do. I mean, we're told that since day one in dental school. One day when you guys open up your practice, so it's kind of almost expected, even though I think things are changing now a little bit because of how competitive it is. There's some that are kind of holding off on starting their own practice and may join maybe more of a corporation group practice, or we call in dentistry DSO. They may do that for a few years to help bring down their student loans before they open up their practice.
And how did you get your first customers?
Well, we had purchased an existing practice, so we already had existing customers. Oh,
okay. Yeah. Okay. Because I think that's a pain point for any business owner, especially the new business owner and it's actually, I'm a member of a few different groups that have a bunch of small business owners in it. And literally the number one thing that people cling to is marketing. And they don't cling to it because marketing is just that exciting. It's because what they're thinking about is, how do I get my next customer?
Oh yeah, that's. I feel like that's a whole other topic with the marketing, and which is something we handle too. And actually, just before this podcast, I was in another webinar learning more about Instagram. We're starting that up now too. We started the Instagram just about 2 weeks ago, and growing that. And that's another way to get followers. And you're basically just educating them, bringing awareness to those followers about your services, and some that may want to become your patients, and they call your office. So it's not just Google and Facebook anymore. I mean, Instagram is pretty huge now, pretty influential. Mm-hmm. You can't ignore that platform. Mm-hmm. So we're jumped right into it.
Yeah, and maybe it's worth it to dig into that a little bit, because I know a lot of people, when they try to create momentum for their business on social media, they typically, what happens is they're extremely active for maybe a week or two, and then they sort of fall out of interest on it, or they don't see the results that they maybe were perceiving they would see on it.
Yeah,
and it's an inability to stick to the long game.
Right.
What's been y'all's experience with that?
We're trying to. You're definitely in it for the long game. I mean, doing this hard sell and just, hey, we got this special, call us and make your appointment. You're not really engaging them much. You're just kind of sort of stating the obvious. You have a special, here's your number, you know where to find us. And in social media, things don't work like that much anymore. It's not as effective. It's got to be almost emotionally driven now. It can't be like a hard sell, can't be, as the examples I gave before. You got to really connect with them.
Mm-hmm. So how do you tell me what does that look like because what's funny about dentistry is I feel like people in general have very negative or apprehensive or anxious feelings about going to the dentist. And I would be curious to hear how you flip that stereotype.
Well, I baby my patients. I let them know what to expect. So I set the tone. I do everything in my power not to try to hurt them, which is hard to do when you're going in with a sharp metal object into their mouth. It's hard, but I have a strong topical anesthetic, but I have a pharmacy compound for me. That helps a bit. I use the smallest gauge needle that I can. I go in slow. I'm shaking their cheek. It's a distraction technique. I'm talking to them. I'm asking them how's their day, how's their kids doing, do they have any plans for the weekend. They've got their sunglasses on too, and that helps to kind of block some of what we're doing. Just a lot of different distraction techniques that we're doing. Some of them that might be very anxious. We may offer them nitrous oxide or like a Xanax to take too. It's using different techniques, different modalities to help.
Mm-hmm. Obviously I would assume, walking into your practice from the moment someone comes in, it probably feels different than what someone mentally thinks of going into like, the old beat up dentist office with the flickering fluorescent light and
yes. It's funny you mentioned that because my cousin who lives in Chicago, he goes to a dentist you just described. This dentist has like AM radio, playing, some talk show in the background. And my cousin has a 10-year-old son, and this dentist for a toy blows up his glove and just ties it into a knot and gives it to him. Yeah, my cousin's like, oh, I need to find a dentist like you out, but out here, I'm like, yeah, I'll help you find one.
Well, it's about the customer experience, and this is beyond like industry. It's like, what does a customer feel like when they work with you? Is it easy? It's like one customer that I used to have, and then I don't have them anymore. And I was talking to the person the other day, and she said, it's just not the same, the people I'm working with now, as it was with you. Because for me, like, the customer experience is just so valuable. Like, that person has to feel like they're just totally taken care of, right? And I see, it feels like the competitive advantage for a lot of dental practices are the ones who really get that and really invest in that. So here's what I mean by this. When I was a kid, I really had an awful experience at the dentist and like swore off the dentist. I was like, I'm never going again. Finally found one that was just amazing, incredible. I mean, such a warm, friendly, awesome environment. And they actually, what's funny is they put in my bottom retainer, like the permanent retainer I have. And so like years later, I mean, it had to have been like 10 years later, it felt like that retainer was coming loose. And I was in my hometown and I popped in there, and it was just incredible, man. All the same staff, literally all the same staff, same dentist. It was like I was 13 years old again. And they remembered me. They were so excited to see me. And I just remember thinking like, my gosh, like this place, they understand how to keep a customer, right?
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
There you go. I mean, he figured it out too. He's taking care of his customers and taking care of his employees.
Oh yeah, exactly. And what's interesting is because I don't go there anymore because I live somewhere else. But even as I was living in Northwest Arkansas, I was considering driving down to my hometown, which is about 3 hours away, just to go to my dentist, just for my cleaning. And I thought, this is ridiculous. And I'm fortunate enough to have a dentist now who is literally the exact same. I mean, they totally get it. In fact, they consult other dental practices. I mean, they just totally understand the recipe.
Right. I mean, it means a lot. I mean, I'm flattered when I have some patients that drive out all the way from LA. It's about 2.5 hours away to come see me. Like, oh my God, thank you for coming. I mean, you probably passed up at least 1,000 dentists, before you get to me. Mm-hmm. And yeah, she just feels very comfortable coming to us, her and her kids. So, because she moved away, we have some other patients like that. So it means a lot to us.
Mm-hmm. And it feels like people sometimes it's tough asking you these questions because it feels like you just get it so well that like I'm asking these questions that you're like, yeah, duh, of course. But I know, and you probably know too, other business owners who don't see this way, but like it feels like you really understand the value of a return customer and keeping that customer. And I don't even mean like value, like monetary value, although there's obviously immense monetary value from keeping a customer, but just what it does long-term for your brand, for your business, what have you, and I don't even really know my question other than it just seems like you get it. It seems like you understand that sort of like this gratitude or this gratefulness of, I love that people choose me as opposed to someone else. And I appreciate that. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, but I think setting the tone even before you meet them, I think counts for a lot too. I mean, before they even come in, they're setting the appointment. We're greeting them. We're thanking them over the phone for having chosen us, and then when I meet them, I tell them the same thing personally. And when they leave, we send them a thank you card signed by all of us. So it's little things like that we do. I think that goes a long way and helps with building, just building that relationship. Mm-hmm. They just feel connected. They feel part of something, and we just build on that. That's about it. And we're always looking to improve. Always, I'm always looking at new things that'll make their experience a more positive one.
Mm-hmm. Something else you had told me before the episode was that in terms of like your business success, you mentioned how you've had to really develop your communication skills and really invest in that. And you even, I think, mentioned, developing yourself to be more, or I guess maybe prioritizing empathy and emotional intelligence and, understanding those interpersonal skills. Is that something that's been natural to you, or did you? I mean, when did that skill set come about?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know.
Isn't it funny though how things that are so positive about us are also so mundane in the sense of like, I don't know, it's just part of who I am, right? Well,
I like to think it's kind of part of who I am, but I mean, it definitely took work in developing it more. Yeah, it's, but it definitely takes work. I mean, you just can't, I don't know, at least for me, not that much work, but it did early on. Yeah, it just, I don't know, kind of part of who I am, but yeah, you definitely can't neglect it. I mean, you gotta, it's hard to fake it. Mm. I mean, I don't know. I'm the type that, I'm just friendly to everyone. I'm nice to my neighbors. If my neighbor needs help with anything, I'm going to walk over and help them. I've had patients who have trouble walking where I'll help them to their wheelchair and help them out the door, or pass them over to their caregiver. But I do my part, do what I can. I mean, I think it's, people pick up on that, they sense that when you're genuine. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think it's just hard to fake that. So I like to think it's, it's part of who you are, I guess. But you have to be, it's but you have to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
And these are some hard questions you're asking me, man. Whoa.
Oh man. Here's the deal, man. I just,
Oh, no, they're good questions. I just, I don't think about it. I don't verbalize them often enough.
Sure. Well, there's things that are so incredible about us, like professionally, that are just so mundane was the wrong word. They're so routine about who we are that I think sometimes we don't even realize, oh man, that's really a special quality. Right. And so,
I just think that at least when it comes to me that, my field, we're so focused on improving our clinical skills, being the best that we can be in our field, that we're neglecting other things that are just as important. Just basically having those, having the emotional IQ, respecting others. It creates just a healthy environment overall. There's so many benefits to that. It just makes sense, and I think the other reason too why I am the way I am is from my own past bad experiences when I was an employee. I've had some really, really bad bosses years ago, and they'd make me second guess everything I did, and I was always stressed out. And I made a promise to myself, if I ever became a boss, I wouldn't be that way towards my employees. Mm-hmm. So when you're respecting them, it's you're creating a healthy work environment. They get to be themselves, so it reduces stress, right? Mm-hmm. Improves job satisfaction. That's really number one reason people leave their jobs. It's not money. Right. It's how they're valued, how they're treated.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting too about that was I just had this conversation with someone who they were quoting, and it's been quoted to death, but people leave bad bosses, and it's true, right? They do leave bad bosses, but what I think is really interesting is that people even leave bosses who are very positive and warm, but because in spite of that boss having a very positive personality, the employee still does not feel valued. Meaning, I don't really know why my work's important. I don't really feel like I'm making a difference here. It's perfectly polite and pleasant, but I feel like my work does not matter. And I think that's especially true for millennials who are really trying to hitch their wagon to something that they can say, man, this made a difference. This was important.
Mm-hmm. You bring up a good point. My entire team, they're all millennials. You just got to keep things fun, fresh, exciting, different. You got to empower them, not micromanage so much. That's what I do at least. Hey, you want to take on this new project? I'm like, I just can't. And they're always eager. They're like, absolutely. Yeah, I'll do it. And I was listening to one of your other podcasts where I was cracking up when you had talked to another business owner, and they had mentioned that they reward them for the number of years of service that they worked for them with a $10 bonus.
Oh my gosh! Yeah,
if they work for them for 5 years, they get $50.
Terrible.
Oh my God! I go, that's a bad way to go. No way. You got to really take care of them. Give them a much bigger bonus.
Well, and I think that's part of the disconnect in the sense of, it's funny talking to you because again, and I don't think you're and you're not arrogant at all. It's just, I love how obvious and simple you're making all. It's like, yeah, why wouldn't you do it any other way? And yet, man, that is one example amongst dozens of examples of bosses that I talk to who they just do not get it. They cannot get it. It's like, I can't remember if you heard this example, but I don't know if I've talked about this one, but it was a business owner who was really frustrated that her employees were quitting. And I said, well, so my first question, and it's typically always my first question, what are you paying them? And she said, well, I'm paying them all minimum wage. And I said, okay, that's probably why they're not staying with you long-term, is because they were staying with her for about 6 months. And I said, people who are living on minimum wage are typically they're really strapped on their mortgage, apartment payment, bills, what have you. And so they're thinking that's their big pain point is where's the next check?
Right.
And so you're if you want to keep talent, you have to pay for it. And she was like, well, I can't pay more than minimum wage. And I was like, okay, well then this problem's never going away. And so I just love how simple you make it, how obvious.
Yeah, you have to compensate them fairly and competitively, right? Mm-hmm. And just treating them well. I mean, obviously this isn't, you have to set expectations too, right? I mean, they're not up to par. I mean, you got to have that talk with them too and tell them what you expect from them. But I'm fortunate. I don't have any of these issues anymore. And they don't call in sick either. They're apologizing that they're, going to be 5 minutes late, because they got pulled over by a cop because they're racing to work, not wanting to be late. And they're showing me pictures, or they're texting me with pictures of the police car next to them. I'm like, that's not necessary. I'm sorry to hear this is happening. You take your time. There's no pressure, really. It's okay. That's the team I have.
Well, it's weird to me that people make it one thing or the other. Meaning, if I pay them well, then suddenly I'm running a charity and I can't hold them accountable, or well, I'm going to hold them really accountable and they owe it to me, and they have, by golly, they have to earn every quarter that they want.
I mean, that's just, I don't know, that mentality. It's
just weird.
That fires. I don't know. I just think that if you have satisfied employees, they're going to be much more productive, and just contribute more. They're going to do more for you. Mm-hmm. They just, I don't know. I mean, that's not my experience, at least. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
You get it, man. That's part of the reason why I wanted you on the podcast. Was I just was like, this guy really gets it. And man, I wish you well. I'm glad you've had 10 years of success, and I hope that there are 10 more years on the way. What's coming in 2020? We're towards the end of 2019. What are you focused on right now as a business owner?
I'm just continually just growing the practice more, and I'm going to start lecturing too for some other corporate companies too, doing a little bit of that. So, and I'm also I'm working with another institute that trains dentists on placing implants. So I've got a few other things lined up too that I'm excited about.
And then how would you like people to stay connected with you? Because I just know, man, even if people don't feel spurred to action just from listening to this podcast, I know there are people who are out there who want to be better bosses and better leaders. And I just know people would want to know how do they find you? How do they follow up with you? What's the best way for someone to do that?
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time.
Great. And for our listeners, it's Ray Cros with only one S. So CROS. Well, awesome, man. Hey, I appreciate your time today. And I loved listening to
thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for the listeners, let me know what you think about the episode. Blake at goodadvicecoaching.com. Take care of your people. And by the way, if you are one of those employees who maybe you have a bad boss, hey, maybe it's time for you to move on and find a place that really does value you. Because there are bosses like Ray who are out there. You just got to be willing to go out there and actually find them. So thanks for listening, and I will catch you next week. See you.